It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back,
everybody.
It's so good to have you in our care. We did promise you a continuation of a subject that we broke last week. We are dealing with the sinuses. I think a lot of people are struggling at the moment. I think it comes with the shift in season maybe, but millions of people around the world are affected by it and can be extremely intensely affected, causing pain to other parts of the head. It can be extremely mild as well, and we just live with it. Maybe it lasts for a couple of days. One way or another, it is affecting a lot of people, and with the change of season and the change in the air, sinusitis can be more prevalent than during other times of the year, as your body kind of makes that adjustment to the alerting weather conditions. And boy, haven't we experienced weather conditions from every angle.
Oh, absolutely. That's why we brought in a panel today to discuss this. Topic is ear, nose and throat specialist Dr. Gary Krokamp, as well as personal trainer Heinrich Besson. Please join us if you have a question about sinusitis. Send us a WhatsApp voice note. We'd love to hear from you. That number again is 063 408 8863. Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Good morning. Heinrich, I know the air's a bit thinner up there where you exist, so I don't know if
I was waiting for the first talk joke.
I'm sorry, I have to do it. I haven't seen you in a few weeks. I just had to get it out there. But Doc, I'm going to start with you. Sinusitis, we talk about it, we hear about it, but I don't think a lot of people actually take on board what it is. So break it down for us in as simple terms as possible. What is sinusitis?
Well, basically, sinuses are air spaces in your face, and because they're air spaces, they need to be ventilated so that they can drain. So they've got tiny little openings. And if you get sick with a cold or virus, and even COVID these days, or if you have allergies, then those little tiny air spaces can block. Exactly. And they produce too much mucus, and then you get discomfort and pain, and then you can get a bacterial infection on top of that.
So often when people describe their signs and symptoms of sinusitis, it often sounds quite similar to COVID-19. How do we differentiate between the two? What are some of the keynotes that we can say that you don't have COVID and you just have sinuses?
So that was a focus right at the beginning of the COVID epidemic, to try to tell the difference. But these days, with Omicron being quite mild, it's functioning almost like a normal viral infection, certainly in the sinuses. And so you start off with itching and sneezing and congestion and runny nose. And then when you get a sinusitis, what happens is that when those sinuses become blocked and you get pain. So that's about a week to 10 days after the initial signs of the infection. So I would say at the beginning, it's more likely to be a viral infection like COVID. But if it lasts for longer than about a week to 10 days, then you're looking at a bacterial sinusitis.
Yeah, before I ask you 10 questions about COVID that you're not prepared for.
I'm ready.
I'm ready for it. We've all come to terms with that. We've got Kerry, I think, weighed in on our WhatsApp line. Let's hear what she had to say.
Good morning. One of the allergies I developed weirdly was allergy to chocolate. But the other thing that I developed was fibromyalgia. So ever since COVID, I'm in constant pain.
I've heard of it before. We've dealt with it. I know in medical circles it's a bit of a grey area, fibromyalgia, but I think a lot of people have had time to kind of hold a mirror up to themselves physically and been asked some big physical questions. And boy, do we know ourselves well after 2 years of lockdown and having gone through the ringer in the sense. But thank you so much, Kerry. Keep those comments coming on our WhatsApp line. 063408863 is the line to use.
Definitely. In terms of physical, exercise and just nutrition, how important does that play in sinusitis and just coming to terms with dealing with all these symptoms?
Well, I think generally sinusitis, as mentioned, is kind of like a viral infection in a sense. So I think a lot of the rules kind of apply, which you kind of want to apply to, I want to say, long COVID or just generally colds and flus. You kind of want to be just cautious, first and foremost. If you do feel struggle breathing, it's okay to exercise, first of all, if you feel up to it. If you don't, then obviously you're going to have to take a bit of a breather. But generally, even if you feel up to it and you do feel a bit of slight, I want to say, impaired breathing, then definitely do take it easy. But again, it's not necessarily, again, in a mild case, you probably don't have to necessarily say to yourself, you have to sit out, but you got to be conscious. And I mean, it's probably the difficult thing for anybody exercising. You kind of do want to just push through and go for it because, you hear all these slogans about just no pain, no gain. But, you got to be smart about it as well at the end of the day.
Yeah, and also you end up weakening the body, and I know we do need it. I think a lot of us have that physical crutch now. We need it from an emotional perspective to get out there and move to boost ourselves. But read the room, I always say, just kind of do a little self-assessment and get to know how you're feeling. Why can it just go away, and why does it persist, Doc? Why do we have such a sliding scale in that sinusitis space?
So there are people with anatomical blockages or narrowings, and those are the people that tend to, when they get a cold, tend to suffer, for weeks and months afterwards. So we call it chronic sinusitis when it goes on for more than about 3 months, and that's a bad situation because, the antibiotics aren't working, people are using washes and rinses and nose drops and Sinutabs and just not getting better. And we look at those people differently to the acute sinusitis, which is the one that happens immediately after a viral infection. And you need to treat that differently. You need to use steroid nasal sprays, and you need to rinse with lots of saline and try and get on top of it that way.
Hit it hard, hit it fast, okay? There is no space for sinusitis. I joke about it because so many people are affected by this, and we do talk about it being a scale. Some people very heavily so. We'd love to hear from you if you have dealt with it, and especially if you've come up with some ingenious solutions, maybe something that the doc has mentioned right now. If you're training on it, how do you deal with it? Let us know. 063-408-408 or 408 8863. So that's 3 8s, eh?
Yes.
3 8s. So don't throw in a fourth, and we'd love to hear from you. Bring us those voice notes, please.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back, everybody. This is your Feel Good Breakfast Show. We're continuing with our health discussion, and it's all about sinusitis. Now, overlapping symptoms can make it difficult to determine if you have a sinus infection, do you have sinusitis, or COVID-19. Well, these issues are compounded when we spend long hours indoors due to the weather or quarantines. And here to take us through some of the major differences between the two is ear, nose, and throat specialist, Dr. Gary Crocump. And if you have any questions about sinusitis, you can send us a WhatsApp voice note on 063-408-8863, as well as personal trainer Heinrich Basson is also here to answer any questions you have with regards to physical as well as nutrition for your body.
Yeah, Heinrich, I'm wanting to know about the effects of long COVID and how people can train through that. So we're going to touch on that in just a moment. But can you believe it? Adele has called in all the way from Pretoria, not from overseas. So Adele, we say hello. What she had to say on our voice note, our WhatsApp line is this.
Good morning, Expresso show. This is Adele Erasmus. I've been struggling with sinus since ever, and after COVID, it's worse. I've got a nasal drip that is permanently there. Any advice on that? How can I get rid of it, or how can I make it better? Yes.
Please. Adele, I can hear the frustration in Adele's voice.
Yeah, Adele's annoyed.
Yeah.
Post-nasal drip is a bit of a nebulous symptom. It can mean many different things. And, anything from sinuses to allergies to infection, but also even reflux. Acid reflux can irritate your throat and make it feel like there's mucus at the back of your throat all the time. So if it's a nasal drip with other nasal symptoms, then I'd recommend as a first line just to rinse out the nose with saline. Try and do that every day. There's commercial kits available. You can make it yourself. Half a teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon
Get
of
onto
bicarb.
TikTok. I guarantee you'll find 10 million ways of doing it. Yeah.
So you can pour it in neti pots, you can squeeze it in, you can syringe it in. Just rinses away all the irritants, the allergens, the things that are annoying your nose. And if it gets worse, if it doesn't maintain with a saline, then I would go into one of those nasal steroid sprays, which really reduce all the mucus being produced.
And then, just from a doctor's perspective, how would you approach a case like that? Would you do a swab, get it tested, look for bacterial infection, make any assumptions about the viral load? I use words that have come up over the last 2 years. How do you approach something like that? Should this not work, what should she be doing in terms of searching for help?
Well, look, if someone sees me with this kind of problem, my job is sorting out the sinuses. So I'll actually have a look inside the nose. So I'll get my eye, and what I do is I use a little scope, flexible scope, and I put it into the nose, and I'm looking for things like polyps in the nose that are, chronic irritation. I'm looking for mucus that's draining, discoloration, green, yellow, clear, whatever. And I'm getting an assessment.
Start putting the pieces together.
Yeah, exactly. So, and plus those systemic symptoms, if you're getting other symptoms as well, that gives you more of a clue. But, if it's just the nose, then we'll treat the nose and see how it goes. We'll use time as a diagnostic tool over the course of, 3 to 4 weeks and see if we can get it under control.
I'm sure Adele is so happy with that. Well, the WhatsApp line is buzzing. We also have Minnie that weighed in with this question on the WhatsApp line.
My name is Minnie. I know what you're talking about. I have sinus and high fever. I have constant headaches and it's always running nose and it feels like you're all the time sick.
Is this an extreme case? Is Minnie an extreme case where she has a runny nose, she's constantly feeling sick? In terms of how far along in sinusitis in her journey is she? How far along is she?
So you come to my office, you'll see like 40 people like Minnie in our waiting room. And you've got to try and decide, is it allergy or is it sinuses? Because they're very similar. So people with allergy have, congestion, headache, drippiness, and people with chronic sinusitis have much the same. So as I said, we'll look with a scope, we'll try and get an idea. And if they're not responding to sprays and washes, then I'll get a CT scan of their sinuses. And then you can tell exactly. If the sinuses are clear, then we can focus on the allergy, avoiding allergens, rinsing it all away, maybe thinking about antihistamines and those steroid sprays. But if it's sinuses and you're not responding to treatment, then you might be looking at surgery to open the sinuses and make sure that they're draining and ventilating.
All right, now we're going to talk about that thing that in the world of science, no one really knows what it is, but we've given it a label. We've called it long COVID because we're seeing effects of COVID in so many ways that we haven't had the chance to study the data and really figure out what's going on. Yet every day we have to get up, go to work, train. How many people in your space have had long-term effects from COVID? And what's your recommendation for people to train through it? Because we've got to get on with our lives, man.
Yeah, I think, generally, I think it's difficult to not interact with somebody who is struggling with long COVID or currently has COVID or whatever the case might be. It is prevalent. So you've got to understand what you need to do about it, though. And being in the health and fitness industry, specifically a trainer as well, I'm always going to be an advocate for exercising, but I think it's important to notice what's the difference between exercising and actually just being active, because there is a difference. You don't necessarily have to be exercising per se, but you can I suppose, yeah, you can move. You can be a little bit active, So generally, I would say, with even some of my clients, it's generally about gauging, first of all, where they're at. If you can understand where you're at, you can then formulate a plan to kind of combat whatever you're feeling. So in extreme cases where people have been struggling with excessive long COVID, I always do suggest, whether it is getting up and walking around the house 2 laps, just through your house, doesn't matter how big or how small, whether you have a 1-bedroom apartment, whether you have a 2-story house, it doesn't matter. Just walk around a bit, get moving. You can always upscale it, take the dog out for a walk the next day or the next week. After that, you can slowly venture into very light, moderate exercise. And then obviously, it's dependent on how you sort of cope with that. You can obviously just expand your horizons, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, provided you're not allergic to the dog and haven't swapped that for a cat.
Exactly. That's what's good to have both, the medical and the exercising points of view.
I'm just laughing inwardly about you saying a lap of your house, and that's not an uncommon term to use because we've all been doing laps of our houses, our garages, our driveways for the last 2 years. You can move through long COVID, but it's about, I think, assessing, Heinrich, as he said, assessing where you're at, and if you are struggling from those long-term effects and need help in that sinusitis space, especially, go and speak to your health professional, get advice, let them check you out, and as we've said, keep those WhatsApp line notes coming. It's a safe place. You can vent, you can share with us. We understand the irritation, but we want to hear from you. 063 408 8863. That's the line to use to drop us a voice note about anything on today's show. You have free reign, go wild.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back as we continue our medical discussion this morning. Ear, nose and throat specialist, Dr. Gary Crocump. I know Gary Ocump is sitting at home going, yeah, I told you, no, it's not. For a moment, I did think you had snuck in here with a different name. No, we got the doc with us today, and we've got Heinrich Besson, of course, a trusted source of information in the health and fitness space for us on this show, and we are delving a little deeper into a topic around sinusitis, but also where long COVID comes in, and a lot of people dealing with both the same thing, and of course, we put it to you guys to weigh in on the conversation as well, and you have done so, dropping us voice notes on 0634088863. And we've got Lee from Cape Town weighing in right now. Let's hear.
Good morning, team, and good morning to the doctor. I just want to know, doctor, after this COVID I've lost my sense of smell, and it's very irritating me. How long will this take?
Oh, buddy, I'm sure this is one of a myriad of new things that have been written down on a new chart somewhere. And as much as we know that you're an ENT and you're not a respiratory specialist, so many of the long COVID kind of discussions are around issues of the nose, of the sinuses, of smell. Why does your smell go with COVID, and when can it come back?
Well,
It's a very interesting one because, we had people losing their sense of smell before COVID, of course. People wasn't quite as well known. But any viral infection can cause damage. And what happens is it's the nerve endings that get damaged by COVID. It's a neurological injury. And it can be variable. It can come back after 2 or 3 weeks. It can come back but not be quite right, so things smelling a bit off.
My beautiful mother-in-law smelt rotting meat with most things. Can you imagine?
Imagine.
Eating your cereal and smelling rotten.
Yes, exactly. And then, there are a small subset of people where it never comes back, so I don't want to be too pessimistic. But, dealing with a lack of sense of smell means you can't smell off food, you can't smell gas, fire. So, it's really underrated. And plus, there's this whole enjoyment of food and aromas and so on that you're losing out on. It's a major quality of life issue.
Yeah, and when we eat, I think we need that to a degree. Yeah.
Yeah. So most of your sense of what food is like is actually your sense of smell. Now you're getting your basic salt, sour, sweet, umami, and bitter from your tongue, which actually isn't lost. But everything else, all the flavors, that's all sense of smell. So the question is what to do about it. If we get to someone within a few weeks, we can try cortisone. That sometimes helps reduce that neurological injury by reducing the inflammation. And then nowadays there are little kits that you can get, which are sort of smell training kits to try to work with that,
awaken those
Coffee
nerves,
beans,
yeah.
I've seen coffee beans.
Yeah.
People use coffee beans as well to awaken the senses.
That's right. So, it's a little bit nebulous. We're not sure how well it works, but there are little kits and they're not expensive. And you can work and practice and get your brain to relearn what things are supposed to smell like.
Got it. We also have Eunice from Lotus River who's also weighing in on the WhatsApp line, and she had this to say.
Good morning. My name is Eunice. I have a question about the sinusitis. Why is it that every night when you breathe, your one nose, like the other side of your nose, gets blocked? And does it have a cure?
She pleads. She asks.
Is there a cure?
So your nose, your blood flow in your nose alternates about every 2-3 hours. That's called the nasal cycle. So usually one side, if you're getting something wrong with your nose already, we don't notice it when we're well because your nose is open and so that alternation in blood flow doesn't affect you. But if you've got a cold, if you've got allergies, if you've got some structural abnormality of your nose, like a deviated septum, if you've got sinusitis, then that blood flow means that the one side is blocked for 2 or 3 hours, and then after a while, then the other side is blocked. The same thing happens when you're lying down. The blood drifts to one side, it blocks to one side of the nose. You can't breathe, you turn over, and then the other side is blocked. It's very annoying. So I think get your nose checked. Let's see if there's a problem there, a blockage. And if not, again, rinsing the nose and using a spray to reduce the inflammation will usually help quite a lot.
There's a husband out there pointing at his wife. I told you it's different when I allow the left to the right. I told you. It changes. Heinrich, you've planted a seed in me in understanding that you can train, and I use that word read the room a lot. You can train once you understand where you're at. Are there ways that we can build a health and fitness routine? Because the fitter and healthier we are, the more we move, the healthier we are, and the less susceptible to sort of viral attacks we are, and our immune system is strong. But if we are feeling those effects of long COVID, it's not like we can go out and run a 7 or 10K and get that cardio. And how do you work around that? Can you still get the most out of your body if you aren't feeling that great or maybe are dealing with sinusitis? How do you approach that for those clients that need to keep moving? For yourself, because you've also been through quite a lot in the last 2 years, yeah.
Look, I think the important thing to notice is I kind of use the term success looks different on different days.
Yeah.
It's not about putting a blanket approach and saying something that if you do a workout and it's a successful workout, it means you've done 100 burpees and that's it. So anything less than 100 is an unsuccessful workout.
God, if there's anyone who's done 100 burpees
Wow.
today,
Actually,
geez, well done, man.
Who doesn't do it for fun? Who doesn't do it for fun? So I think it's understanding that success can look different. You need to, again, first of all, be sure where you are. If you're kind of aware of what your current state is, whether it's on the morning, on the day, or just before you exercise even, it makes it a lot easier to know what you can do and can't do. So for instance, as an example, if you are feeling a bit of tightness in the chest, you obviously want to stay away from anything cardiovascular related. So that means running, anything that's essentially going to spike the heart rate, which will make you breathe a lot more rapidly. So then you can look at different movements. You can look at gently, again, walking. You can even look at doing strength works in the form of body weight stuff, body weight squat, body weight push-up. And again, there you can moderate the intensity a lot more, as opposed to with running, with skipping, with any cardiovascular movement. It's quite difficult up to a point to control your own heart rate. There will be a region where it's just going to get higher and higher, and then that's where the trickiness comes into the equation. So I want to say, like, success looks different in every day. Today, success based on how you feel, especially if you are, I want to say, engaged in some sort of viral infection or some sort of issue, if you want to call it that, then you've got to understand that success will look different on every day. So it doesn't mean it has to only be one thing. You know, yoga is another great form of exercise, Pilates, anything that is kind of determined by how you're feeling on a
And trust me, even just doing rehab for my back after an hour and a half, I'm dripping with sweat. Like you say, it looks different every day. If you're suffering from the man flu, just getting out of bed and getting that cup of coffee in the morning, that's a success. You've won. Thank you so much to both of you. He calls himself a doctor, but he said the word umami, so I think he's a bit of a hipster, and he's got a motorbike. Come on. You guys have been amazing. Thank you so much for dealing with a broad range of questions this morning. Hopefully you find something helpful out there, but we need you to keep helping us. If you've got any advice on how you've dealt with long COVID, or especially with sinusitis, seeing as how prevalent it actually is, 063 408 8863 is the WhatsApp line to use. Please send us your voice notes.